Hi, people. One of the purposes that I've used this channel for is, I guess, expressing things that I see around me, things in society. So I suppose they could call it social commentary, punditry, if you will. If this was a news network, it would be punditry. That's fine. I fully admit that. Um, but that's what I use it for. So sometimes, frankly, it's about getting things off my chest that bug me. Um, Although I'm going to talk about positive things as well. For this video, it is on the more negative end of things, but it's important because I think it's a big problem in this country. Um, Alcohol and people who can't control it is a very, very toxic combination. So I've just been coming back from the city centre. Sunderland's been in some big football match with Sheffield Wednesday today. I don't follow football, so I don't know the specifics of it. I think it's something to do with the FA Cup because it's at Wembley. So lots of merchandise and so on going around. Now, even as a non-football fan, I appreciate that football has extensive support. And it can be genuinely good in a community when a team is doing well. But I'll just say this, I do think football can also bring out some ugly behaviour in people. I'm not just talking about the traditional hooliganism, of actual violence, but just loud, obnoxious behaviour. Now, I want to substantiate this a little bit. I'm not talking about people being in good spirits and celebrating because, that's, if there's a communal feeling with that, I do understand that. It's like, if we won the Eurovision or if, which is unlikely, but, I get that. I do understand that. But where I draw the line is this idea that, drunk people who can't control themselves, they take over the place and they think that they just disregard the rights of others. I think that's disgusting. And I do think it's a problem in this country, and I think it tends to come out with sporting events. So, like I say, in Sunderland we've had that. So the city centre, there's lots of those annoying Vuvuzela things, which just one of the worst inventions ever. They're just a racket. There's not a tune to it at all. I'm talking about the little tube things that people blow. I think they originate in South America actually, but very, you know, they're just a nuisance. Um, like I say, people in high spirits, that's understandable. I expected that, but walking back, there was two drunk women and a guy. Presume he was drunk as well. The woman, I'd say middle aged, she had a glass of something in her hand, lager or something. I think it was lager because it was. I just clearly out of it. Clearly, barely knew where she was, mouthing things off because I wouldn't talk to her. Obviously, apparently I'm a stuck-up bastard. So I ignored that. But as I'm walking along with my groceries, trying to get home she's sort of on the same path, her and the other two, and they didn't really say anything, but just, muttering under her breath. And I kind of stared at her because it's not on. It's disgusting that people think they could treat strangers that way. And I didn't really say anything at first, but then she started mouthing off again. Oh, what's he so stuck up about? And I told her she was pathetic drunk because that's how I felt about it. I don't really go along with this idea of, oh well, they don't know what they're doing, they're drunk, like excuses basically. Um, the onus is on obnoxious drunks to sort themselves out, to look at themselves in the mirror and realize how they come across. Now, I'm no prude. I enjoy a drink, and yeah, there's been a few times in my life when I've been drunk, when I've had quite a few. But I can honestly, hand on heart, say that I was the silly, merry drunk more than the obnoxious drunk. I think some people, there's two kinds. There's people who kind of get a bit silly and embarrass themselves a bit, and that, in certain circumstances, that isn't ideal. But at least they're more or less harmless. But unfortunately, you get drunks who then get threatening and obnoxious towards others, towards strangers. Now, what I never done, and I can say this hand on heart, I never approach strangers. I never communicate with strangers when I was like that. I'd maybe be a bit silly. I do, I'm talking about my university days. Um, so I'm not a prude. I'm not like someone who's teetotal and who just, it's not like that. But it's like, if you're in an airport, there was a debate recently about, I think it was Ryanair was talking about, not letting people get on flights if they've had a couple of drinks. Although it was pointed out that Ryanair um, has mixed messaging on this because they've also promoted alcohol. But I have to say I agree with it. My idea of hell would be a Ryanair flight or an EasyJet flight from, say, Belfast or Newcastle or Manchester to Lanzarote or Mallorca or somewhere like that with a hen party or a stag party. That would be my idea of hell. And arguably, the hen party is worse. You know, if a guy attacks me, I'll fight. I will lay him out if I need to. Well, I'll do what I can to protect myself. If it's a woman, it's a tougher thing because she can easily make something up, and there's a whole social taboo of, you can't strike a woman. Although I would say on that point, I agree with it, but I think self-defense is absolutely fundamental for everyone. I do believe that if an able-bodied adult is attacking another able-bodied adult, then it's fair game. I believe that. Um, equality means equality in that sense. But I just it just disgusts me that people behave that way and they have no sense of the rest of society, that they're so selfish and they're so stuck in their little bubble of stupidity that they don't see it. They don't see how they come across. Um, it's antisocial behavior, and the government spoke about cracking down on this. As it turned out, this particular situation, I just gave as good as I got. I told her she was an obnoxious drunk, and then I kind of made my way back. But I wasn't going to just be silent and say, "Oh well, she didn't know what she's doing." No, I don't accept that. Um, if someone can't handle the liquor, then the onus is on them to sort themselves out. That's how I see. That's how I see it. But drunk people, it's not about getting a bit merry now and again. It's just this thing of threatening strangers, of mouthing off to strangers. It's disgusting, and it's just totally unnecessary. High spirits isn't an excuse for that, or whatever their domestic issue is, or taking that out on other people. There's no excuse at all. So I feel strongly about that. And I'm just putting it out there. What do people think of this? I personally think that regarding airports, if a flight's delayed, that's annoying. No one wants that situation. But why do you have to pass the time with alcohol? Why not get a coffee? I think anyone that goes to an airport for a drinking binge, that's not what an airport's for. An airport is a terminal of transport to get from A to B. I really don't see why anyone has the need to drink excessively. Yeah, one or two drinks perhaps can be nice in a stylish bar in an airport, fine. But this idea that we need to have a drink, it's pathetic, and more importantly, it actually puts other passengers and airline staff in danger. I think someone who gets drunk at 35,000 feet, I think they should have the book thrown at them, really. I think it should be mandatory prison time if they get aggressive. Um, Not just banning them from the flight, it should be mandatory prison time. That isn't just obnoxious, it's actually dangerous. Um, and other passengers who paid money shouldn't have to put up with that. Airline staff, flight attendants who are just trying to do their job shouldn't have to put up with that. So I've been quite lucky because it doesn't tend to happen on long haul flights. And even when I've been in short haul flights, I've been lucky, so I haven't really had to deal with that too much. I have had it on trains where I've been on a late night train and some loud people get on, and it's intimidating. I won't lie, it is intimidating. I'm a healthy young man. I could probably look after myself if I had to, but I'm not Superman. I can't take on a whole group, and I wouldn't. I'd be more cautious about even speaking back to them because that's the other problem with drunk people. They don't know what they're doing, and they've no inhibitions. They've no sense of um, boundaries. So it's quite intimidating. I think actually what they should do when there's a big match on is they should designate particular coaches or train carriages just for supporters, and then other people can have a coach for themselves. Why not? Have say the train has six coaches, give four to the football supporters, just flicking in the numbers, and then dedicate two or three to the other passengers who don't want to put up with them. Because This is what annoys me about some football supporters, and I'm not generalizing here. I know people who are really into football and they're lovely people, they're great people. But some football supporters are absolutely selfish. They think that because they're in high spirits, their team's doing well or whatever, that gives them a right to just take over the place. It doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. And I'm sick and tired of this idea that the rest of us should just be okay with it. Um, I'm not into football, but even if I was, I would still have the same view. I mean, put it this way, I'm into boxing. But yeah, frankly, some boxing fans could be obnoxious as well. I hold the same principle. Don't take over. It's just I do think it's a big problem in this country. I'm not saying Britain's unique, but I would say this country has a drinking problem. And on that subject, there's been a lot of government efforts in recent years to get people to quit smoking, and there's been a big, big crackdown on the tobacco industry. I'm not necessarily against it. Smoking kills, smoking causes secondary cancer, it causes lots of problems, costs the NHS a lot of money. So I've no problem with that in principle, but it does seem that there's a big focus on smoking and far, far less focus on alcohol. Now, alcoholism kills less people, but then you get other problems related to that. How many times do you see problem like violence related to smoking? Nowhere near as much as alcohol. So in terms of antisocial behavior, I would say alcohol is a much bigger problem than smoking. But successive governments have just focused on smoking. Um, so let me know your thoughts. Again, I don't want to come across as a prude in this. I enjoy drink as much as the next person. I'm fine with high spirits. All I'm saying is people shouldn't be so selfish and think that that gives them a right to take over. And as for, if you're the sort of person that has a few drinks and you start mouthing off to strangers, or you want to engage in some conversation with someone that doesn't want it, just leave them alone. And then don't be surprised when they're hostile because they maybe don't want to be harassed by a drunk. It's not about being stuck up. It's about not wanting to get harassed. It's about wanting to mind your own business. So that's how I feel about it. Let me know your thoughts. Maybe any anecdotes. But yeah, I support airlines and cracking down on that. Although in the case of Ryanair, probably there is double standards going on there. But like I say, if a flight's delayed, that's annoying. Have a few coffees. People, there's no excuse for needing to have a drink. I think that shows borderline dependency, and it's a problem for everyone.